Unless Peggy or Ron want to have a comment, I don't see any public for any comment in closed session. So I guess with that, we'll just move right on to closed session. Before I call this meeting to order, I want to take a moment to recognize what's happening with Peter Brown and his family. For those of you who don't know it, his family, his daughter passed away unexpectedly. So I just want to take this moment because we all know Peter. I'm sure we all know him, and I believe many of us know his family. So I believe that I'd just like to take a moment of silence just to keep him in your thoughts and prayers. So please. Thank you. With that, we'll go ahead and report on the closed session. Jim, anything to announce there?
The board met with staff and legal counsel on the items under executive session. No action was taken that requires disclosure under the Brown Act.
And with that, if you rise for a pledge of allegiance, I'll lead us. Please join me in saluting our republic. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Director Vallejo.
Present.
Director Heyman.
Present.
Chairman Kaczynski.
Present.
Director Page.
Present.
Vice Chair Gleason.
Here.
Okay, public comments. This time is reserved for the public to address the board about matters not on the agenda. No action will be taken on non-agenda items unless authorized by law. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Judy Decker. I know that you all received... Well, there we go. I know that you all received the history of small agriculture in the Indian Wells Valley. And I wanted to point out that paper talked about the hard work that was done through the years. And there are hundreds of domestic well owners, while they aren't agriculture, that have gone through the same thing. When you're a domestic well owner, you buy a piece of property out in the desert, you have to put in the infrastructure yourself. The well, the water lines, the power lines. If you have a propane, the propane lines. You build your house inch by inch. Most of the people who built their houses on parcels of land in the county did so while working an 8-hour job somewhere, most of them on the base. It has taken us years to get where we are because my husband, Don, did practically all of the work. And I wanted to point that out to you people because it's a lot different than coming to town, visiting a real estate agent, buying a house in a tract and moving in. Thank you.
Wes Katzenstein, speaking for myself. I just wanted to alert the public of a document that I made that I asked to be distributed to the members of the Groundwater Authority. It's titled Use-Based Allocation of Groundwater in the Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Basin. I understand it's posted on the Groundwater Authority website, and the objective of it was to allocate groundwater based on uses of groundwater to realize the most reasonable usage of the basin's groundwater resource and treat all users symmetrically. So what I did is I took a look at uses and users of groundwater in the basin, acknowledged groundwater rights, and made an effort to identify how you might measure reasonable use of the groundwater as required by the Constitution. And the measure of reasonableness I came up with was the number of livelihoods that are sustained or not lost, and the amount of infrastructure investment that is not lost as we move into the GSP. So just wanted to let you folks know, to the public, that that's available, and I hope it adds some insight. I'm not a lawyer, but I hope it adds some value. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, and we've seen it. Thank you. Is there any other public comment before I move on? Hearing none, I'll close the public comment and move on to the consent agenda. On the consent agenda is approve the minutes of board meeting of August 15, 2019, and approve the expenditures as listed on the agenda. Is there any discussion about that from the board? Any questions? And we will be getting into a finance condition discussion later on in the agenda. Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Any other comment? Anything from the public? I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Number 7, board discussion and consideration of approving letter of support for the Defense Community Infrastructure Program. Don, are you presenting about that?
Well, the staff report was prepared by Capital Corps, and I believe we have Michael McKinney on the phone to present this.
Yes, you do. Good morning, gentlemen.
Okay, Michael, the floor is yours.
Before you is a request for a support letter supporting a provision in the Senate version of the Defense Appropriations Bill. It is part of the Defense Communities Infrastructure Program, a program that was authorized back in 2016 as a pilot program, and $100 million was authorized. The Appropriations Committee on the Senate side has seen fit to put a $75 million appropriation funding this program. It is the first time that DCIP has ever been funded. We view this as a potential avenue to seek funding on behalf of the Groundwater Authority in future years. It is probably not going to be something that we will receive an appropriation for in this year. If we were to ask for one, it would be small, given the fact it is a $75 million appropriation, and there is well over $200 million already sitting in the pipeline. This is simply to support the program and to ask Congress to continue it and to actually begin funding it in future years. It would require us to go in and plus this budget up and seek another authorization of additional amounts. I doubt that we would be alone in that. There would be several groups that are still going to be clamoring for funds. But the whole idea behind this program is to create off-base infrastructure for base use, things that are of critical need. And so on the list of competing priorities are a number of water projects, a number of pipeline projects, wastewater. Also, transportation is very heavy on this particular list, things that would allow for infrastructure in and off of a base to, essentially smooth things along and help the traffic flow in their particular areas. There are a couple of water projects which are very similar to an Indian Wells project. We believe that we received congressional confirmation that the Indian Wells Valley project does qualify under DCIP. But again, we don't need the funding right this moment. We'll need it for future years. So we are asking the board to essentially support this as a placeholder to support DCIP for future years and kind of preserve the program. And I'll answer any questions from there.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Yes, Bob.
Yeah, Michael, the staff report indicates that the Senate appropriation bill for defense includes money for this program and indicates that the defense spending bill would have to go to conference with the House. I'm assuming because there's no mention of money related to the House, is that conference is a discussion about whether or not the House is willing to add money because they don't have any in their budget right now?
That's correct. It was not included in the House version of the appropriations bill. That makes it a conferenceable program, and we would be asking for it to be included in the final version in conference committee. That is essentially what this letter would ask for.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the board?
Seems like a pretty obvious thing that we should support.
Yeah, it seems like it, yeah. I agree with you. Okay, I'll open up to public comment.
Stan Rotora, and I am speaking for myself only. I agree with the concept of the document, sending a letter in, although there is one sentence in the second paragraph that I feel should be deleted, and that's the one about the Navy and the Navy's statement about encroachment. My feeling is we don't have to be quite so blatant about advertising the fact that we're running out of water, and that for two very good reasons. First of all, we don't want to give those laboratories that would like to get the work that we're getting right now any additional information to use against us. I don't think that's appropriate. And secondly, if I've got money and I want to invest in affordable housing or anything else in our valley, I also don't want to be advertising the fact that we're running out of water. I think it's just too blatant. The message is there, whether the sentence is there or not. So I would like to suggest deleting that one sentence. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment from the public?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Hi, Michael. It's Derek Hoffman, counsel for Meadowbrook. I just had a question for Michael. I thought I heard him mention that he received indication that the IWV GA project fits the definition of the act or the bill. I just wondered if he might shed a little light on what the project is beyond what's in the report. Thank you.
It would be, if I may, it would be either interconnection project, either through LADWP or through AVEC. Both would qualify as an off-base infrastructure project critical to need.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? I want to bring it back to the board. Commander, do you have any comments on that particular concern of Mr. Rotora's, that part of the letter?
No comment from me. No.
No comment from you? Okay. All right. Any other comments? No, nothing? All right. So I'm going to look for a motion to approve sending the letter. And I notice, Mick, you're still glancing at it. Do you?
I just wanted the second sentence.
Okay. So I'm looking for a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Moving right along, Water Resource Manager report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, it's good to be up here again. It's good to see everybody again. It's a beautiful day up here. You'll be pleased to know I don't have any speeches or anything, so it's going to be pretty short for me today. There's not going to be any long, unless you ask questions. Then I have material we can do, but I don't have any speeches. Update on what we're doing on our office. I think I reported to you folks that Jeff Helsley, who's come up here, he usually comes with me. You'll notice I'm solo right now. I'm the only one here. Jeff had an appendicitis attack on Monday night, the Labor Day Monday night, Tuesday morning, I guess, and he went to the doctor. They had trouble diagnosing it. Why they took 8 hours to figure it out, I don't know. But apparently during that 8 hours, his appendix burst, and so then he was in the hospital for like 4 or 5 days. He just came back to work, so that was Labor Day, right after Labor Day. He came back to work Tuesday of this week, and he's been working about half a day, 2/3 of a day. So I asked him if he wanted to come up, and he said, no, I don't think I'm up for that yet. So, but he is back to work, so we've got Jeff back. Heather would be with me right now, but and I asked her whether she wanted to come up here, and she said, I would really like to go, and I'd like to go up there and see those folks and talk to everybody. But she's got a lot of GSP to write, and she's busy writing GSP. So I was volunteered. They're working in the office right now. So I'm here. Water Resources Manager report. Gary can put the first one up, which is the Prop 1 grant. Oh, did you know? There it is. Prop 1 status. This is the grant funds. The submission we have right now is the second invoice and progress payment. Remember, we got a complete progress report that needs to be written along with the actual invoice. Covers the period October through March. So we end up going for that. It actually covers 6 months rather than 3 because it was a catch-up. It went through a process where it goes through a process where our contact, her name is Jennifer at DWR, does an initial review. She usually has some minor questions and asks for some questions, some things clarified. We give that to her. But the way the state works, then she hands it to her boss, who's also in management, and her boss has to review it. And then if she has any questions, it comes back to us, which she did. So it had to come back to us. Surprising, this is the second round, and we thought it would go a little smoother between her and her boss, but we did have to go through a couple rounds of revisions on the invoice or additions to make it acceptable. We did get it back to them and approved towards the end of August of this year, of last month. The total amount to be received is $352,000, so you can see it's a fair amount, and we're going to hear a financial report later that tells you that we do need the money. Our contacts with the state, we've been contacted with them. I actually looked for help from Dawn to actually ask if maybe from a public agency, like a general manager, asked, maybe we can get a little more information from the state about when they're going to pay. The best we got, I think, was toward the early part of the month. It says it was received in late August. Normally requires 4 to 6 weeks to get paid, so you're looking at the end of, as we put, the end of September, early October. So that's where we are with that invoice. Everything's in shape. We're just waiting for them to pay the bill. Invoice number 3, this will be the third invoice. If we can, assuming we get back on track, which I think we are, you'll see that it's going to cover April through June, so it's back to the 3 months. You're going to see the amount is less because it's only 3 months, about half, $160,000, so it's consistent. The draft is pretty much done, ready to go to Jennifer. It should go to her. That's the other thing that Heather's working on. It should go there to DWR either this week or early next week. It should be going to DWR. So we're on track there. That's the status of the Prop 1 grant. And I don't think I have anything else to add unless the board, anybody has any questions. The next item, which I don't think we have an overhead for, that we have on the list is SDAC, the Severely Disadvantaged Communities Program Update. We've been going back and forth on this. As you know, the board, we all delayed this process a bit because of cash flow and because of some other considerations with contractors, things. We could have set things back a little bit. One of the issues that came up was as we move things back to implement the SDAC, this is the $500,000 we're getting with no match to do this program, so it's all grant money. As we move the program back, there's still questions about cash flow. Then we started looking at the agreement that we have with DWR, and it looked like the period of time we needed to complete the SDAC work was bumping against the amount of time we had left under the Prop 1 agreement. So we looked at an extension to the Prop 1 agreement. Right now, we're in a position where we've gotten informal approval from DWR for that extension. We've got it in writing, but in emails. So it's gone through their management, and the manager says, yes, it looks like it's fine. They're agreeing to extend it to the end of 2020, all the way to the end. They actually extended it another 3 months more than we asked. They said, if we're going to extend it, let's just go ahead and extend it to the end of the year. So that's what it looks like. They asked for a draft letter to review that is consistent with the email that we sent asking for it. Heather sent that. Jennifer's reviewing that. As soon as we get that back, should be any time, we give it to Don as the general manager. He'll sign it and send it up there. So now, in the process of looking at these agreements with the consultants, and I can give you, I'll have Jim talk for just a minute, but I can give you some background on the SDAC program. But there was some work to be done on the board approved executing the agreement subject to certain things to be worked out with the consultants, including extending the amount of time to pay the invoices because of cash flow. And Jim worked on that. So, Jim, did you want to just provide an update of that work?
Where we are is we have final language with, I don't know if this is working, final language with the consultants, but part of the motion by the board last month was not to sign the agreements until we have complete authorization from DWR. It's our understanding we should have that within the next 30 days. But I will give you a heads up that if we don't have the official notice from DWR in October, but we're fairly confident that we're going to get it, we may come to the board and ask you to authorize us to go ahead and do it based on the upcoming proposed approval. But that's all we're really doing is waiting for DWR right now. That's all I have.
Okay. So the SDAC program involves a rebate program, and it involves a water audit and leak detection repair program for the SDAC, those communities, disadvantaged communities. The consultants we have on board, you probably heard it before, but just to give you to reiterate, I guess, WaterWise Consulting is on board for the rebate program. They've already signed their agreement. We're waiting. We're just waiting on us to go forward. Let me back up a little bit. The fact that we have cash flow issues right now, our approach to setting up these SDAC programs with the grant fund money was to write them so that the consultants effectively did 95 to 90, at least 95% of all the work. So even the administrative process, our goal is to try to push it all on them and not have our staff, our team staff, or us having to work much on this. So the goal is to keep our costs down and put it all on them because they're getting reimbursed through the DWR grant. So that's the goal. WaterWise is the consultant for the rebate program. That program includes program administration. There's a whole list of items under program administration, providing rebates for installation of high-efficiency water-saving devices, high-efficiency toilets, clothes washers, dishwashers, urinals, hot water recirculating devices, and other devices that the consultant will pull together and get out into the community. So that's what the program is for. It also includes costs for them to come to these board meetings and give updates to the board and to the community. So that's all part of their program. As I mentioned, the payment program for them, when they submitted it, was payment within 30 days. We actually got them, Jim working with the consultants, got them to extend that to 90 days. So they'll have to do the work, develop an invoice. Once we get the invoices approved by the board, then we still have 90 days to actually pay. So that's good. The other program, the water audit leak detection, the consultant is California Rural Water Association. The work involved there is identifying the SDACs within the basin, which it's actually involved in both, performing the water audit services for the SDACs only, conducting leak detection surveys, critical zones and full zones, critical areas in the distribution and in the entire system, preparing a written report of the leak detection activities and the survey results, and then they would ask for a task order that would result in repair services as allowed within whatever funds we have under the grant. They would have to record, evaluate and record all of the work that they did and conduct the repairs, and then also conduct the regulatory process with any of the regulatory agencies if they're going to get in and have to do repairs to the system. Obviously, DDW has to be involved. They have not yet signed it. Last I talked to Joseph, they had not yet signed it, but they were prepared to sign it, so we should be getting that. And I think that's it. We've already done the extension, so I think that's it under the SDAC program.
Just one thing to mention, we'll get into it when we get to the pro forma and the financial report. Just keep in mind with respect to these grants that the money has to be fronted by the GA before we get reimbursed. So keep that in mind as we go through the pro forma.
Yeah. And there was that, Don is correct, there was a provision in the original SIGMA that allowed you to apply for front-loading funding. We did apply for that, and we're denied. So it has to be done the way Don said. So that's it for the update on the SDAC, and we should be hopefully no later than October, coming back to you, then maybe moving forward on the program. So wait, the next PowerPoint, I think, is a schedule. Okay, a schedule. It's fairly brief because we don't have much time left. We don't have much time left to do what we need to do. I think Commander Longbottom is, I hope he's not watching, because he'll probably shoot me right now. This is not poem. We did not do it in the poem format. We kind of agreed that where we're at in timing right now, it didn't make sense to go through that whole process because that involves a whole bunch of things of interconnecting tasks, and it also interconnects money and funding and budgets and all that stuff. And so at this point, we're trying to wrap things up. So we kind of abbreviated the schedule to bring us closure of the GSP. That's the whole goal, get us closure of the GSP. I'm going to start at the end, at the very bottom. Well, there's two sections. One is our work, the development of the GSP, and the second part is GSP review and the finalization to get it finalized. You can see that we got things started. We got start dates and end dates. I don't have the bar, but the bars help you folks. I just have the dates. There it is right there. Jumping to the end, and I had an argument with my people. Everybody, Heather and Jeff both told me we need to move. You look at item 17, which is public hearing board adoption of January 16th. We set that up for the regular board meeting. And I said, put it on the regular board meeting, leave it there. We got to shoot for that. I'm getting pushed by my people that said, we need to push it back. We need more time. We need more public review. And I said, we can always push it back, so we may, as this goes along. I said, we can always push it back, but if you push it back now, I'm never going to get you guys to move it forward. So, and it's a regular board meeting, so we're still shooting for that board meeting, a regular board meeting, to review it at the board level, having done all the review that we're talking about here, hopefully adopt it, and then process it with any comments we got from the board, last-minute comments, to submit to DWR. So as you can see, if we look at the top, these are the chapters that are being prepared, and I'll talk a little bit about where we're at on the chapters separately in just a second. Under the GSP review and finalization, I think the key items are number 12, which is staff review, and that starts at toward the third week of October. That obviously means we have a complete GSP draft that we are reviewing. When I say staff review, that includes our staff team and legal counsel. We want a legal counsel and our internal staff to look at it before it goes anywhere to make sure that it's complete, make sure that there's nothing illegal, sensitive items, that at least is prepared properly and is prepared to be released. The goal right now is to start that review, internal staff, on the 22nd. And I'll give you an update about where we're on the sections in just a minute. But I can tell you this, we are still trying to get sections 4 and 5 out. You've seen sections 1, 2, and 3, and I'm going to go over in a minute. We've got a lot of comments on 2 and 3, section 2 still coming in. The goal is still to get section 4 and 5 out, whether they're released at a TAC meeting or whether we just release it to the TAC and to the board and the public and draft. We're still trying to get them out ahead of the internal staff review. We're looking at the whole GSP. We're still trying to get, and Dave and I talked about this just the other day, and to the PAC, I'm sorry. We're still trying to get an opportunity for people to look at it as early as we can before it starts to be consolidated into a full draft GSP. So I'll let you know that. But anyway, line 12 talks about internal staff review. We take about 6 days to do that. Then we incorporate the comments from the team and the attorneys. Then we take it to the TAC and the PAC. That's looking at the first part, the meeting in November. We would get it out to you ahead of time, hopefully, give you a chance to review it. Maybe we would actually present. Depending on what you want to do and what the board directs, one of the thoughts was maybe even have a joint meeting in November. We'll wait and see. We still got time for that. Because if we're going to present the GSP draft, it might be good to present to both TAC and PAC together. That was just my thought. Again, my staff looks at me and shakes their head and say, "You're crazy. You'll never get through it if you do it that way." But I'm just throwing it out there as a thought that we might do it that way. So that's the TAC and the PAC review. Then we incorporate TAC and PAC comments on line 15. from the 18th to about the 21st, pretty short. I think I cut that time down too. I anticipated, and this is just my thought to my guys, I anticipated that after we've done the staff review of our team and our attorneys, and we got into that good a shape, and we've seen most of the sections that have been out there, we're assuming that when we get the draft GSP out there at the TAC, that the comments we receive are not going to require monumental changes. I could see we'll make some changes inside how it's presented or what we do, but we're anticipating no monumental changes. That's why I only have for line 15 to incorporate TAC and PAC comments. We've only allowed us like 3 days to do it, not very long. So we're not anticipating wholesale changes at that point. At that point, we set the 45-day notice for the public hearing. We had the public hearing on the 16th. We finalize it and finalize the GSP with all the comments we've received, and then we submit to DWR pretty much in that last week of January. So that's the schedule, and we certainly will, at the end, we can take comments and thoughts folks have about that. I did want to give just a quick overview of kind of where things are, and because I had it separately on the chapters and such. As I mentioned before, we have released sections 1, 2, and 3. They're out there. We got a lot of comments, and we're still getting comments, and a lot of good comments. Part of the reason why Heather is there, because you guys are very active. A lot of comments coming in. We're getting a lots of comments to address, and frankly, there's some duplication, but we still have to go through each one of them and try to make sure we've got them and keep it sort of characterized and the type of comments, and try to incorporate the things that we all judge, at least on the first run at, that need to be addressed. I doubt, I'm going to give you a heads up, I doubt whether we're going to be able to provide something like you would get back on an environmental document, like a CEQA document, where you would have a list of comments and a list of responses. Originally, that's something we could have tried to do. But we've got so many comments, it might be thicker than the GSP at this point if we try to just address all of those comments individually. We will do everything we can to show where we can a strike and underscore where we took comments in and provide that in the draft GSP, maybe 2 versions of it, one clean and one with a strike and underscore, so you can see what changes were made to make it easier for you to review it after we've gotten the comments in. But that's where we're at right now. Like I say, we've received comments from the public, the PAC of the TAC, on all 3 of those sections. We are working on those. Section 4 is sustainable management criteria, and I'll do that, and Section 5, projects and management actions. Both of those together. We did present concepts, preliminary, really just concepts, and some of the initial thoughts at the TAC meeting, and to a certain extent at the PAC, even though we weren't there. David did provide those. We got a lot of comments. Some of them are very good, and we're already implementing some of those comments. I'll tell you, some of the comments about making sure that it's consistent with historic data, it's not 100% reliant on just the computer model. Agree, we're going to show it both ways, and we're going to put the sustainable management criteria. Some of the sustainable management criteria where it's done kind of academically, which didn't show a lot of room between thresholds and some of the minimum standards, and these only allowed a foot or two. So we're working on that. So we're working on a lot of the comments you've given us already, and that's again why I've got people in the office kind of working their way through that stuff. I will say, just for those who are not really familiar with SGMA and what's required in these sections, in the sustainable management criteria, we need to address sustainability goals, undesirable results, minimum thresholds, measurable objectives, interim milestones, monitoring network, all of those in the sustainable management criteria. So we covered most of those at the TAC, some in more detail than others, but all of those will be addressed when we get Section 4 out for review again. Under project and management actions, as I mentioned, we got a lot of comments coming in on what we provided. Heather did provide a presentation on the primary projects and management actions that we have. Those are basically pumping limitations, pumping restrictions, trying to limit, reduce the amount of pumping on the overdraft. That is a management action. Recycled water is a management action. Imported water is a management action. Conservation is a management action. And we've included the conceptual project, at least the brackish water project, as a potential management action. Those are all in there as management actions. So we've gotten comments on some of that, on the detail we need to provide beyond what was presented at the TAC, and we're addressing that right now. The last section of the GSP is really Section 6, Plan Implementation. And I'll just let you know that because everybody else was working on 4 and 5 and taking comments and trying to pull 4 and 5 together, I told Heather and Jeff, I'm going to write Section 6 and get ahead of you guys because nobody's writing it right now. So I wrote Section 6, and they told me I did good, but they told me a lot of it's wrong. So, they've got it right now. And they said the stuff I wrote wrong is still usable, but it's just in the wrong sections. It's in the wrong place. So we are working ahead on Section 6. So and I like what's in Section 6 right now. But we will have that out for you guys too. So that's a summary of where we're at on the GSP and the schedule, of where the schedule is and where we're at on drafting the GSP. And I think with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions or comments from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I thought you weren't going to give any speeches.
I got through 3 items.
Yeah, and
thank you very much. I appreciate it. I really appreciate all the work Stetson's doing. That's remarkable, and all the work this community is doing. Yeah. I think there's one little thing. I hesitate to suggest it, but I do think we need to consider having a evening town hall event. I think that. Now I'm scared. I think transparency has been our focus. We said it, and now we've got to make sure that we're committed to that. And I just think that to finalize it, Mr. Chairman, I think that's something that maybe we should suggest that we incorporate somewhere in there, whether it's prior to the TAC or in communion with the TAC and the PAC. That event right there be held in the evening, and we as a board sit there also, or something, whatever we want to do. But I think to economize time. But I think we just need to accommodate evening folks. Yeah, thank you, sir.
And thank you for the comment. I wholly agree with you. I believe so. And Scott, you have something?
Yeah, I agree also. I think after the TAC and PAC review might be a good time to do it because it allows them time to digest it, and it's pretty much public information at that time too, and then have a meeting. Yeah.
Thank you. Correct me if I'm wrong, Steve. All these sections as you write them are actually out there for public review.
1, 2, and 3.
Yeah,
1, 2, and 3 are. 4 and 5 and 6 are not.
But the public is seeing them because I know you're getting comments back.
Oh yes.
So
yes.
That's a good thing. It isn't
yes.
as though the public's going to see the complete plan and have to go through this and
correct. That's why I'm hoping. That's why I say I'm hoping that we're anticipating that we're not going to have any whole changes once they get the whole plan.
Right.
And 4 and 5 sections 4 and 5. The major components we did present to the TAC. Now we got a lot of comments back on that, and a lot of those are going to be expanded and changed. But yes, it's out there.
Thank you. Anything else from the board? If I open up the public comment. Oh, David.
Not the board, but a point of clarification. Steve, you said the TAC and the PAC were only going to have a couple 3 days to review. And item 14 shows an 11-day period.
No, I was us to address your comments.
Oh, you're okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah,
that's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Okay, to the public.
Stan Torah again, and again I'm speaking for myself. I'd just like a little clarification as to when is the entire GSP going to be released to the public. I'm a little concerned that it might be the 45-day notice of public hearing as opposed to earlier. My thinking is that 45-day period is right over Christmas. Going to be very difficult to get people's attention. And I'd like to suggest that when the document is released in whole to the TAC and the PAC, maybe you could see fit to release it to the public.
Yes.
As well. Hopefully, if these things are being released one at a time and the public has had the chapters, that certainly will help. But it would also be nice to have the whole thing together.
You're exactly right.
Thank you.
No later than the TAC and PAC meeting. No later than that. The whole thing.
Good morning, Elaine Mead. If I could get Steve to clarify something. I thought I understood you to say that Stetson would incorporate TAC and PAC comments and they would have 3 days to do that.
Yes.
The time frame shown in your chart is, I counted about 14 days. I realize that Thanksgiving is in there, but I wouldn't think it would take out 11 days.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, the 18th, I can't see. Yeah. No, yeah, we do have more time than that. Corporate tax, so 18th through the 2nd, you're correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any more public comment? All right, I'll close public comment on this particular item. Any more from the board on the report? No questions, no comments? All right. Then we'll go ahead and move on to one of my favorites, update on the finances. So, Don, I'll let you start
It's
here.
not my favorite.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm giving it to you, and then we'll chime in.
The report this month will be of 3 sections. We're going to do the monthly report that you normally see. There's an update to the pro forma that was presented to the board, I think, 2 months ago. And then we've been asked to develop some framework for an administrative structure going forward and the costs associated with that. So that'll be the third part. All these are in your packet. So the first is the monthly update, and I'll just walk through that really quickly. Again, this is through August. The beginning balance at the first part of the year was $476,713. Revenue through August is consisted of 2 parts. That's the pumping fees, which total $360,754, and the first invoice reimbursement from DWR, which was $335,567. So our total revenue would be $1,173,033. And then if you go through the expenses, which I won't go through the detail, it's all listed. It's broken down based on the POAM, specific tasks of the POAM. Our expenses through August, $1,065,841, which leaves us the ending balance as shown on the report, $107,192. The unpaid invoices are listed below that. You've approved payment of all those. Obviously, we don't have funds to pay all those, so we will pay what we can. We'll pay based on what we have in the balance. We'll pay $46,467.71. The first 5 invoices you see there. Stetson's balance for the we've got 4 invoices there. $390,958.56. So when we do get that reimbursement, which hopefully comes in late this month or early next month, that money will go to paying those invoices. So that's where we're at for the month.
Thank you, Don.
Any questions on that before we go to the pro forma?
I want to look. I'm looking at the assessment pumping fees, and the fiscal year to date through August is $360,000, but we have a total budget of 2019 of $763,000 roughly. So we're just over halfway, and yet we're already to September.
Yes, as far as the pumping fee, total collected since it was implemented, we've collected $525,780.17. And as you see, $360,000 of that was collected this year. It's actually, and we'll show it on the pro forma, but it's actually coming in less than we had originally budgeted. When the pumping fee was established, it was based on 2016 numbers, production numbers reported to the cooperative group, minus Navy and a couple others. But it's based on 21,600 acre-feet of production. And the fee was established at $30 to fund the gap between the actual cost of developing a GSP and the grant. There's a gap of $930,000 approximately, so that fee was intended to address that gap. As you can see, we've now collected we haven't collected all the fees for August yet, but we pretty much have a full year since that fee was implemented last September. We have a history of a full year of collecting the fees, and again, we've come in at about $526,000, well short of that $930,000 that we intended to collect. So that's contributing partly to the financial picture you see, as well as, of course, the timing with getting reimbursements from DWR for the Prop 1 grant.
Okay. And I know we'll probably discuss that more in the pro forma. So if the board doesn't mind, we can move ahead to the pro forma, and then I'll open it for public comment after we go through the pro forma.
Okay, we'll go on to the pro forma. A couple months ago, we did present one that went through June of 2020, and then after presenting it to the board, Heather with Stetson mentioned that Stetson anticipated some more expenses going beyond June 2020, so we thought we better do a revision. So what you've got in your packet is a revision that takes it out to December 2020. And the thing I'm sure you'll notice at the very bottom, the ending balance going forward, beginning of this month, we are in a negative balance every month going forward. Carrying out to December 2020, we anticipate being in the red, if you will, $560,618. And if you add to that, it's mentioned on the upper left-hand side, toward the end expenses, we do have, of course, the reimbursement to the County of Kern for $500,000. We have the city's request to be reimbursed roughly $210,000. And you'll recall that the Water District fronted $500,000 with the stipulation that that would be a credit on the, whenever a permanent fee is established, that would be a credit on that fee. So you add that to the $560,000, those three things. There is one thing that doesn't show up, and it's one of these, I'm trying to be a half full kind of guy. You'll recall Capital Corps has applied on behalf of the GA for Bureau of Reclamation water-wise grant of $390,266, which doesn't show on here. So if that grant does come through, it's a little bit more revenue.
When is that coming through? When are we going to know about that?
I think it was due at the end of July. I think it's October. What's that? I don't know if Michael's still on. I don't recall. Michael?
I am still on. We are, yes, I am here. We are expecting the Water Smart Grant to be announced towards the end of this month, actually. So we would be notified in late September, and they could be delayed. They never quite run on time. But we're hoping to at least be awarded that and begin negotiations for, the time of delivery and what have you in October, November.
Okay. So going back to pro forma, we've done a couple of things. We did make another revision. This will be the second revision to the pumping fee. We revised it originally for the pro forma, but we've gone through and looked at what really has come in since we have a year of history, and we've rounded those numbers down to match what we brought in. All the expenses that you show are known expenses that we have. Of course, the reimbursement from DWR, that could be timing. We're not sure. We put those in. Heather made her best guess for reimbursement, so those are reflected based on her assumptions.
So all of the predicted payments from DWR are in here.
They are.
The best guess at this point for the when they're going to come in. Yes. Does that include anything for the SDAC? Yes, I think I see that.
I think that is included. Ty is here who put this together. I think if we have any specific questions beyond my level of
I'm looking at the income, which is dreary, and looking at the SDAC amount of $646,000. Is that all included in that line item where I see 335, 352, 225, 203 down the line?
Yeah, it's included in there, but we have some reimbursements that would run out past December of 2020.
Okay, and
we've got 1.6 million accounted for within this time period, and we had a total budget for those revenues, SDAC and GSP preparation, of 2.1.
Okay, and are the expense? Okay, I see the expenses for SDAC in there as well. And you're not projecting any of that start to occur until maybe February next year.
Correct.
So the bottom line of this whole thing is that if you add in the county and the city, we're about $1.3 million in the hole at the end of December 2020.
Yeah,
that's assuming we don't get the grant from. I'll be more on the negative side. I always look at worst case, but 1.3 million or nearly $1,900,000 if we do get the grant.
Yeah, putting this together made me pull my hair out.
Yeah, I noticed that. It's So the intention of this was to project how long we would have to keep pumping fees in place in order to pay for the development of the GSP, and this is not a pretty picture. I don't know the solution to it, because then we're looking at, projecting out based on fees and things, probably 2021 before the plan is paid for. Is that a close estimate?
Yeah, if we need another 500,000, and that doesn't include County of Kern or City of Ridgecrest,
Well, we need to include the County of Kern. There's no
we're
doubt.
Probably at least the end of 2021.
Yeah. All right.
At the current rate.
At the current rate,
Right.
yeah. And so that's something I think that the board needs to take into consideration, is how we're going to make up this shortfall, because the intention is, with this pro forma, is just to pay for the plan. This doesn't include what's coming up next on the agenda about what's planned for the administration and costs as well. So I'm open for comments, suggestions, ideas, or where we want to head with this.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please.
Don,
bail me out.
Why are our pumping fee not matching our estimates?
That's a question that today I don't have an answer for. I think we need to look into that. I just put these numbers together like last week, but obviously, either we're not pumping what we were pumping back in 2016, or numbers are being misreported. I don't know. I don't want to put anything out there at this point. But
And I believe there's some non-de minimis users out there that still haven't registered or been paying, though that's probably a smaller number.
it's a small amount.
Yeah.
Wouldn't make up for this by any means.
Any other board questions or comments before we move on? Obviously, it's something we need to, the staff needs to put their head together on this and make a recommendation about where we're going to go.
Yeah, well, there's a couple things that are obvious, painfully
Yeah.
obvious for all of us. Our estimates are off significantly. This is unacceptable. This type of debt load is unacceptable. We can't accept it. We need to trim from what we're doing now to something that's going to be more accommodative to our budget. And we can't, somehow we have to make sure that we get this thing going. We have to succeed at that Water Smart grant in order to reduce the block. You include, when you said $1.3 million, you included the bulk of what you owe Kern. We owe Kern
Yes,
County.
in all of it, in fact.
But that's going to be amortized over a period of time
Right.
in order to make those repayments. There's some. We need. Okay. We just need to fix this as quickly as possible, and I'm looking forward to working with you very closely and my staff. Work very closely to scrub these numbers and that get them into a place that's more accommodative to where we're at, and we got to get going that fast.
I believe that's where we need to go. The
Thank you,
staff
sir.
needs to take hold of it with our support. Any advice, anything that you need, come to us. Let's get this in order, and let's move on from there, because I agree, it has to be, we have to get this in control and get an answer for this. And it may be, I don't think the answer is just letting the particular pumping fee go on for another 2 years. Maybe we have to adjust that pumping fee. And I don't know when that's up to legal to tell us how, if we do that, but I want to see the recommendations from the staff. And Bob, I see you have your hand up, so please.
Yeah. I was just wondering what the board might expect back from staff at our meeting next month, because the JPA agreement requires that we adopt our budget for 2020 next month. So as part of that presentation of the budget, maybe we could have some recommendations from staff about this issue.
I agree. I mean, we're coming up to adopt the budget. I think we need to have some recommendation about where we need to go with this. We need to have a plan, because to me this is just unacceptable. And like Director Gleason said, I believe it's a combination of underestimating on putting together the requirement for the pumping fee, as well as additional expenses that have occurred. It's a combination of things. It just isn't one. And so we need to be able to look at this. And is trimming the answer? I don't know. Let's see what the staff says about that. How will we trim, and where will we trim? Because everything we've done is of the utmost importance, I believe, and we're learning from it. We're creating a plan from it. And I don't know what else to say, but let the staff just work on it. And any help you need from anybody on the board or their staff, their people, let us know. But it's time to come up with a solution. Can you have something planned by the next board meeting?
If that's what your directives do, yeah, we'll have something.
Yeah, I mean, it could be,
So the expectation is we present a budget next month. Right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so. It may be a recommendation, like I said, about pumping fees, other assessments, whatever may be necessary that we have to put our legal department to work on. Thank you. All right, if there's nothing else from the board, I'll open it to public comment or questions. I think they're like us, Mick. They're sitting with their jaw dropped. No comments? No questions? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on to now. Don, we're covering the administrative later. Is that an agenda?
Yeah, there should be a couple of slides to put up.
Okay. Is that part of your presentation on finances?
Yes.
Okay, then let's go move on to
Yes.
that then. All right.
All right, so I just preface this by saying these are all concepts. There's nothing written in stone here, but we were asked to put together a concept for a structure, an administrative structure going forward for the Groundwater Authority, which you see on your display or up on the screen. And it involves basically 3 permanent, if you will, employees, a general manager, a finance officer / benefits coordinator, and an administrative assistant that would also serve as clerk of the board. Again, you can see the structure in blue at the top. Those are the board members, voting and non-voting. The staff on the left-hand side, we would include a legal counsel, a retainer for legal counsel. On the right-hand side, of course, Stetson engineers would continue to serve the Groundwater Authority. The roles of the Policy and Technical Advisory Committee, we left them on there. Don't know if there would be regular meetings required once the GSP is in place and it's all said and done. But we talked about this. Again, put this together in conjunction with Stetson. I should perhaps say that we went over this with them. We went over the template for the budget with them, so it's a joint effort. And by we, I mean yourself, Chairman Kosinski, our Ty, our staff at the Water District, myself, and Stetson. So with regards to those committees, again, we're not sure what the role would be going forward, but we talked about the concept of maybe going from monthly meetings to quarterly meetings. I think my thought was we needed to keep them engaged. If you don't have a regular meeting, you're dealing with volunteers, and you're probably going to lose interest if you don't have regular meetings involving those people. So we left them on there. DRI, as the modeling consultant, would continue to be engaged with the GA. So that's the concept of the organizational chart. Again, this is up for discussion. I think I sent it out to staff, and I believe I sent it to the board when we first developed it. So we're looking for feedback, your thoughts, but any discussion on this before we go to the template?
You mentioned, of course, I was there as well when we where Stetson was consulting with us on this. Can you review with us, Steve, about your experience with this type of thing, so the board and the public understand how well you've been involved with this type of administration development?
On like groundwater management?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think you mentioned it some places.
Yeah. I could talk for a long time, so we got to be careful on what we do.
Don, just reach over and slap him when he's done.
Okay. Basically, I mean, the firm Stetson Engineers, which was started by Tom Stetson back in 1957. All we do is water management. Is groundwater, surface water management, working for public agencies, private individuals, but water masters. I'm actually a water master for the river water master on the San Gabriel River. That's a 3-member water master. It's more of a technical water master. I represent the whole San Gabriel Valley. We have an intermediate that is like the impartial member, and then there's a representative of the lower area. So I'm actually a water master for that water master. And we mentioned before the operations of the main San Gabriel Basin water master. Our office effectively did the technical work that adjudicated the entire San Gabriel Valley in a state court adjudication, Superior Court adjudication. as part of supporting, and that was all the water rights verification, all the water rights testimony for the San Gabriel Valley. We did that out of our office. We still maintain all of those adjudication files for all the verification work for the entire basin. And when the Water Master was formed, it's a 9-member board also, with private producers and public agencies. When that was formed in the early 70s, they hired us back as their consulting engineer. We've been their consulting engineer, their only consulting engineer since that time. So that's what we do for the entire San Gabriel Valley. But that's just in one area. We do the same thing up in like the San Ynez Valley. We do it in San Diego County. We do it all over western United States, mostly in California, central and southern California. And at the same time, we are also district engineers for several municipal water districts. The Upper San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District, which is a member of Metropolitan Water District, MWD. We've been their, I'm their engineer, but we've been their consulting engineer since they were formed, which is in the mid-'60s. And the San Gabriel Basin is also San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District, which has its own state water contract. And I actually was talking with Capital Corps about their state water contract because they included in their report the possibility that the San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District, they've got a table A entitlement to state water. They've got almost 29,000 acre-feet a year of table A entitlement, which, as you know, somewhere between 50 and 60% is a reliable supply. So you can see that somewhere around 15,000 acre-feet a year.
I am going to interrupt you.
Okay.
Because what I was looking for was what you had mentioned before about some of the districts sort of starting out like we did,
yes.
and then and morphing into a permanent administration time frame and everything else involved.
Okay.
Because you were very
Not just
familiar
general.
with that.
Yeah. Okay.
I gave you a
Well,
chance.
I did a segue. I actually, you should have hit me.
Yeah.
I actually did a
script.
segue when I talked about the main San Gabriel Basin Water Master. Okay, nine-member board. We pump out of that basin right now, and we're the engineers for the basin, both water supply, water rights, and water quality. We pump out of that basin somewhere between 200 and 250,000 acre-feet a year. It's about almost a million and a half people that it serves. And most of the water that's served there is groundwater supply. There's some imported water that comes in, but it's about 85% groundwater, 15% imported water from Metropolitan. The background that Ron wanted me to mention is that when the Water Master was formed back in the early 70s, it was formed with a board and similar to what you're doing here, and that's why it's so familiar with what you're doing here, similar to what you're doing here, when it was formed, the Upper San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District, who I already mentioned were their district engineers, what they determined was they represent probably 70% of the San Gabriel Basin. So what they did is they basically put the Water Master under the envelope of the Upper District and made the general manager their part-time executive officer. And they operated that way. We were the consulting engineer. We were already the consulting engineer of the Water District, but we became the consulting engineer of the Water Master at the same time. So they worked together. They worked out of the same office. The board meetings were held at the Water District office. It was all done cooperatively for a lot of the same reasons you folks are doing it, and that is to be more efficient and not spend any more money than you needed to. And we basically operated that way for almost about 20 years before the Water Master, their duties and their tasks and what they took on became more than could be handled without more of a permanent staff. So then they brought on an executive officer, and it's similar to what you're doing, an executive officer, support staff, and ultimately about 20 years later, they actually moved into their own offices. So very, very similar situation, and it made sense. It worked very well. What are the reasons? I'll just, more than you need, but one of the reasons why they ended up separating was we found groundwater contamination in the basin. And when groundwater contamination hit, we had some nitrates to begin with. We had VOCs. We had contamination from the activities after World War II. A lot of the activities that were there put a lot of volatile organics, perchlorate, rocket fuel, some other things in the ground, contaminated the groundwater basin, made it a Superfund site. When Water Master's activities included trying to clean up the groundwater basin, all the water quality issues, which we're doing right now, it became too much to operate without a staff. So they kind of separated because of that.
So what I take out of that, I think I timed you there. You did pretty good. There's heavy sighs behind me.
Yeah.
Is that number one is that the organization was sort of run as efficiently as possible the way we're running,
Yes.
with a lot of volunteer effort and in-kind effort taking place until they were able to form their own entity, if that's what you want to call it.
Yep.
And that was a 20-year poll. Okay. And that's the point I was trying. Plus the fact that you have experienced this kind of thing. That's why we've worked with you to help develop some of this. As we'll get onto the budget and such, and this chart as well.
Yes.
That's the point I wanted to make. Okay. Thank you. Sorry. No, I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry for you. Sorry. No.
Okay, I think next we'll go into the proposed budgets in your packet. Again, this is a template of accounts that was put together collaborating with Stetson and our staff at the Water District. So again, it's just a concept. The original is what's in black. We did a red line. I actually added the things you see in red were things that I added under the major headings. So what we're looking for, again, is feedback from the board, feedback from staff. What looks good on this? What do you think we need to add or take off or change? And then once we have this template finalized, if you will, then we'll look at, of course, it depends on the structure of the administrative organization that we presented. But once that's settled, we will look at filling numbers into these categories and then bring that back to the board. So at this point, this is just a FYI type of thing. Again, we're looking for the concept of the organizational chart. Does it make sense? Does he want something else? And then fold that into the administrative budget based on these accounts. And if there's something we need to add or change. I will note, as Steve said, Jeff isn't available, but he did email me yesterday when he was in the office. He had, I think, 5 other topics that he thought we should include on here, which we'll look at incorporating.
Okay. And I believe the more important thing is to get numbers to these as quickly as possible.
Yes.
Correct? And a recommendation from the staff, when this should begin to occur, because again, in my opinion, looking at the way the finances are and the budget is right now, I see this is a hard task to get to or to begin to operate like this until we have the money for it or find a way to get the money. So this all incorporates what we're asking you to put together a plan for, first of all, how we're going to pay for the GSP, and then once we know that, then we can move on for this. And I know that we committed that we'd have these numbers by November. So let's see. And of course, I'll help any way that I can. So is there any other comments from the board or things you'd like to say? I'll go there if there's nothing. I'll go to public. Go ahead.
A couple thoughts. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Don. Appreciate it. Steve, let me ask you a question about the organizational chart. I see that the PAC is outside your domain. Are you okay with that?
Yes. Yes, preferred.
He asked for that. I originally had him under Stetson, but he asked to be removed.
Fine with
Why?
that. Oh, no, we have no problem. I was actually joking. Well, the way we're set up right now is the PAC generally, we help. I work with David on a regular basis on the process, but generally speaking, the PAC takes kind of direction from the board, and it seems to work well because it's policy rather than technical. So, and we do bring technical stuff to the PAC, and we're happy to go do that. But because it's mostly policy, it really has more to do with the board than it does with us. But
So the PAC has direct access to the board. It doesn't have to accommodate you on its way. Dave, what do you think?
Well, I noted that with interest, and this is the proposed setup after the GSP. Is that
Right.
correct? We talked about whether the PAC and TAC would need to meet, and I think Steve mentioned that. I think they will, perhaps not on a monthly basis, but certainly on an as-needed basis, maybe bi-monthly or quarterly. But for the first couple years, we're still going to be adjusting this. So I see it a little bit more often than that, perhaps. It has been advantageous for us to work through the Water Resources Manager because under the current construct, we don't have access to the board. And so to get things to you and to get approvals, we have to go through the Water Resources Manager, and it forces us to coordinate with for both the TAC and the PAC. So there are pros and cons it could work this way, and if we had direct access to the board, I could see that working as well, but we don't want to distance ourselves from the Water Resources Manager either.
Thanks, appreciate it. I have a problem with it. I think the PAC should work through you because I don't want them working around you, because they come to the board, we say green, you want blue. I mean, who the heck knows? But I'm willing to go with this as a trial and run, and we'll feel it out as we go along. We'll grow into this. A couple things. I want to make sure that the board understands that as far as the budget goes, that the Kern County is willing to provide a building space and accommodations for that space to a limited extent anyway to help us offset that in order to create independence from any one entity, whether it's the water district, the county, or any city. I think we need to drive independence into our organization. However, after looking at our budget, I understand that economics has to drive these decisions. I'm not willing to develop an organization at the present time that's going to drive us into further debt. That's going to be my number one concern. We got to manage that debt, and once that debt is managed, then we got to drive for that independence as best we can. So I'm willing to leverage existing resources within the county to help accommodate the GSA. I'm not willing to over leverage our debt load in order to accommodate an organization. I think we need to stay within the constraints that God has given us and the taxpayers have given us, and that's what we need to do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I agree. I think the way we're operating, as much as we'd like to see us break out, become as independent as possible, which I'm all for, the economics just don't show it right now. And until we have that fiduciary responsibility, and I believe that we need to look at how this organization operates up until the time, up until the time that GSP is paid for, and we can accommodate the cost for running this organization as a standalone organization. And there's all kinds of things to look at, and we're going to be looking at everything for how it's staffed, minimum staff, everything where it is, and keep the cost as low as possible. That's the real key. So, any other comment?
Just a question. Speaking of streamlining, I think is probably one word that we might use for budgeting purposes. The difference in duties and expectations between the water resources manager and the general manager in this schematic. What are the key differences there? Is there a period of time where maybe those duties could be all held by one person or entity? That's my first question. And then depending on that answer, is there any thought to putting the policy committee underneath the general manager if that's our policy person and the person that's driving the agenda, if you will, that gets to the board?
Thank you. I'm sure they'll look at that.
And last thing, is the clerk of the board a redundant box there with the administrative assistant?
Yes, that's why it says in parentheses administrative assistant.
Same person.
Okay.
Under clerk of the board.
For clarity's sake, I wouldn't, and I might be wrong with my assumption, I would assume that the administrative assistant isn't reporting directly, the clerk isn't reporting directly to the board, but would be reporting through the general manager. And so for clarity's sake, I might remove that redundant box above because it creates an impression that might not be accurate.
I agree with that. I think you can just, where administrative assistant is, just also put and clerk of the board, and it comes through the general manager. I think that's not a bad idea. It cleans it up a little bit.
Okay. And with regard to your question, John, about Stetson's, what we envision here is that there's going to, with the GSP being implemented, there will be engineering tasks. So it's more, instead of water resource manager, more of an engineering consultant, if you will, to the general manager and to the board for specific projects.
And the general manager would then, I guess I'm just wondering what the general manager's job description would generally, too many generals there, but would essentially cover.
Pretty much what I'm doing now, yeah. I believe we had a general manager, I think Alan had drafted, her staff had drafted a general manager job description back when we were advertising.
I've got that, but it's in the book I left at home, so I figured I didn't need to bring it, and now here you asked for it.
We probably have to take another look at it, but there was a job description drafted for a general manager last year.
And just to address that, they are quite different because everything you see here everything about the finances, all that kind of stuff is coming through the general manager. And another thing that we understand is that, don't forget, as the plan proceeds, we're responsible for reports to DWR on a regular basis, well monitoring, what's the analysis of all the wells that are going out there. There's constant reports taking place, and that's what that's what Stetson's all about. Correct me if I'm wrong, Steve.
No, that's absolutely
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
And as we have been trying to do as much as possible, our goal is to try to keep the work we do focused on what's most important for us to do, and try to move more of the administrative, like the verification, the reporting of the pumping, the payment of the pumping fees. All of that work to be done through the general manager. All the prep for the board meeting, all of the administrative side have to be done by staff, and keep us out of that, because we can burn a lot of time and money doing that.
Was there any thought of putting it all under a general manager, including the work that a resources manager would do? I mean, I'm wondering in terms of the overall structure, if this board would envision having kind of a really strong point person to drive what's going to this board.
Are you talking about the hierarchy?
Yeah.
Not necessarily the position, the hierarchy.
Yeah.
Okay.
In effect, that's what we do.
Yeah.
I mean, most of what I do, I coordinate through Don, with Don. Or
Yeah,
with
we
the
could,
general manager.
I can change it to show
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Just basically show the general manager under the board and everybody else pretty much under the general manager.
I think that's.
I'm just putting it out there. I'm not saying that's what's needed.
No, I think-
so.
My issue with that is then you're suggesting that the general manager can make amendments to what Stetson is providing to the board, or can change inputs. And I don't think I'm willing to change what the water resource manager is willing to do in terms of when we come down to water allocations or water issues that are specifically, I don't think that I'm willing to allow the general manager to make adjustments in that, because he's not the water expert. Steve is. Interesting concept. I think this is all flux. I think we're just, we'll see how it goes, and I think this is a good deal.
Has work to do on it, and all these comments are valuable. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. Any other comments from the board?
Well,
yes.
My comment is that I think our income is going to kind of drive this organizational board, and so we're kind of like the cart before the horse right now. And I'd like to see us get back to the the earlier budget as far as, as we kind of wind down from the putting the GSP together, and the costs that all the the costs are high right now because of all the work and everything that's being done. But as we wind down from that and we start seeing slowing down there, how much money are we going to have? How's that going to play out over the big picture? The fees, before we start increasing fees, we need to have that budget trimmed and ironed out, and then we can start looking at organizational cost, and because this looks like it's going to cost a lot of money. And so anyway, I think it's good to look at it, but I think ultimately we have X amount of money, and that we have to, it's going to drive us in putting together this organizational chart, and who's going to be doing what and the cost incurred. So,
And I agree. I think Mick Gleason said the same thing, is that we're responsible for a certain amount of payments just to get the GSP, and to look at implementing this before that's even done, it's all finance driven. So is this going to happen next year? Probably not. It might happen in 2022. So because we have the responsibility to address the cost of the GSP and get it paid for, including the money back to the county and the city. So I agree that this is the beginning of this. I think it's going to go on for a while. I think you're going to see a massage. They'll start putting some numbers to it. We have a ways to go on this, but we're going to get some general numbers. So because we made a promise we'd have some fairly good numbers by November. Thank you.
So takeaways, the one change I think I heard that everybody agreed to is I'll remove the clerk of the board and actually put under the administrative assistant clerk of the board in parentheses, and just take that out. The rest of it seems to be open for discussion. Right?
So far, yes.
Okay.
Good. All right. Anything else for open to public? All right.
Joshua Nugent, Mojave Pistachios. I've got kind of a recommendation and then a question. Recommendation would be to maybe establish an ombudsman position, where if you had a issue with the GA with either financial or whatever the problem was, like where does a member of the public go with an issue. You know, what's a public person who doesn't know very much about the situation finds out about it in February 2020 when they're no longer able to pump? You know, what's their point of contact if they have a grievance? And then the other one, the question is who's I'm going to use it, it's kind of got a negative connotation, but who's the enforcer? So whenever it comes time to shut businesses down, either on February 1, 2020, or in the months following that when people run out of water, you know, who on here has the unenviable task of going out and telling people they're out of business? So thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment before we move on? I see Judy.
Well, going back to a long time ago, I have discovered there are several, maybe quite a few, irrigation wells. They're wells that people put in, and then when the water district came out to their area, they joined the water district, but they kept the personal well for an irrigation well. I believe I'll mention his name because he came up and spoke about it publicly. Skip Gorman is one of those people. There are others. There might be quite a few. And another well that is an irrigation well is the well in Heritage Village. Are you people billing? You don't have to answer me, but I hope you are investigating those people and billing them. They're probably more than 2 acre-feet de minimis users. And then I have a comment. My comment is, as a member of PAC, that's a policy committee. You're asking us to mull over, create, advise you on policies that you will use. I consider this a really serious issue. And we often do not get documentation to study until right before our meeting. I find that unacceptable. I take my job very seriously, and I feel that when things are given to us with a short length of time, we do not make the best decisions. I hope you will think about that and see if it will be possible to change it. Thank you. Oh, the other comment I have is sometimes those little black boxes with the screens that sit on your desk don't work correctly. And I'll give you a specific example. April sent out a notice to us a couple of weeks ago. I even wrote her that I had gotten more than one. April, I want you to know I got 12 of them. I don't know what was going on with the computers. Sometimes they don't work, and when they don't work, you don't receive things in a timely method, and you can't respond timely either. Thank you.
Renee West-Delusk. I live within Ridgecrest city limits. I'm also a policy advisory committee member. I oppose the combination of the general manager and the water resource manager positions. They're both large jobs, and they have totally separate duties, and I just can't see combining those into one, and I think it would be a big mistake. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment? I see Derek.
Hello again, Derek Hoffman, attorney for Meadowbrook. Looking at the 2020 proposed administrative budget document, when you do put numbers to that, I think it'd be helpful to provide a staff report that explains what some of those line items are. I believe that's a request that I and others have made with prior budgets to understand how the money's being spent. It's already a pretty high administrative fee. I think it might be one of the highest in the state, just for the administrative fee. And so an explanation of the budget with content would be helpful. And on that note, there is a couple items on there that kind of stand out. One is under 8B. 8 is legal services, and it uses the phrase water rights. And the comment I'd have is that under Sigma, GSA, neither a GSA nor a GSP has authority to establish, determine, or affect water rights. So I'm curious to know what that budget item pertains to, if you'd be willing to share that. Thank you.
Let me remind everybody, this is the very first draft. There's nothing here that's concrete in any way, shape, or form, and the staff will continue to work on this, and then your comments are taken. Thank you. Any other comments from the public? I'll close public comment, and I'll move on to the board. Any final comments? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and talk about outreach efforts.
Okay, one of the recommendations for outreach from the Policy Advisory Committee was a billboard to inform the public about the requirement to register wells, and the board approved that. So after the last board meeting, Lauren and April, along with, I have to acknowledge, Karen Watkins from San Bernardino County, she contributed quite a bit, put together some concepts. I think there were 7. The 7th one ended up being refined. I think there were 3 revisions of it. They sent it out for comment to staff. Karen was really the only one that responded, so we used her feedback. And because of the time crunch, we wanted to get something moving, not have to wait until the board meeting. So we contacted Supervisor Gleason and Chair Kaczynski and asked for their approval of the concept that they had come up with. And I think it's on a slide. Gary, can you put that up? There it is, right there. So we're proceeding with that. It will be a 10-foot by 30-foot display. We had 2 options from Sun Advertising, who handles the billboards locally. One was on South China Lake Boulevard, and the other was on Highway 178, which is Indian Kern Road between Brady and Mahan. The thought process was that most of the private well owners or de minimis well owners live in the area west of town. So putting it at South China Lake probably wasn't the best location. So we've arranged to have that put up along Indian Kern Road, again between Brady and Mahan. The soonest they could get it up is September 30th. So see, as of October 1st, all wells must be registered, so you have 1 day. No, I'm just kidding. There obviously is some leniency there, but according to the ordinance, that was when it was supposed to be in effect. The cost to produce the vinyl and put it up is $800. To display it for 2 months is another $800, so the total is $1,600. The Water District is willing to front that and be reimbursed at some point later on. So you should be seeing that billboard hopefully on no later than September 30th.
Thank you.
That's it.
Any comments? Board, public? All right. Hearing none, we're going to General Manager's report. Item 12. I'm sorry, 11. I'm sorry, TAC and PAC. Oh, that's because you already spoke once, David. I didn't want to hear you again. I'm just kidding. No, okay. Move ahead. Do either the TAC or the PAC have some comments they would like to make, or are there any comments from the board or questions? Yes, sir.
I spoke, so I have no additional comments.
Oh, that's it, huh?
I don't have any additional
You
comments
don't have
either,
any.
but we're ready for your comments or questions.
Okay, well, I have one, or maybe 2, one for each. At the PAC meeting, as the models were being presented, and especially at the TAC meeting as well, Steve, I know you guys made the comment that you were pleasantly surprised that the model itself tracked the actual data for a certain amount of time. And I heard a comment at the PAC meeting, and I don't know where it came from or who, but I just remember hearing it, that you forced the model to match the actual data, and no one said anything about that. And I felt I needed to bring it out here that you guys, as getting the models run along with DRI, have said that the models themselves with the information you put in and for what number of actual data points you had that overlapped, matched very, very close.
That's correct.
And that's correct. I just want to get that clear.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. During the model, during the not the development of the model, because we're using the same model we've always used, but during work on updating the model, when we did run it, there is a calibration process where you make sure that it calibrates throughout the basin on water levels and things. So we use that as a calibration process. But then when we use it for this purposes, it's a totally different purpose, and we double-check it to make sure it does match the historic, so it does.
Okay.
And one of the comments we've got, which we're taking to heart, is that we should not use the model to set our sustainability criteria.
Right.
And we've taken that, and we're actually going to provide both historic information and the model so that it'll be consistent.
I just wanted to clear up the implication that we were forcing the model to match something.
No.
And we did not. Okay. And the second comment I have is this. We've been hearing a lot about the El Paso sub-basin. I think it was addressed at the TAC meeting, and I think Don Decker addressed that question. And what I want to ask is that that's becoming quite an issue, and then I believe that the people involved in that are concerned about that particular basin, I would like to, if you see fit, is for them to plan to do a presentation to the TAC to basically bring their data forward and what information they have, and let's get it into TAC's hands to get a final determination with the information that we have. If you agree with that, I would ask that those people that are bringing up the El Paso Basin, the sub-basin, please contact Steve, make arrangements. Let's do a formal presentation of some kind to the TAC, with any data, information they have, experts they want to bring forward, whatever they have, and let's see where we move ahead from there, because I think this is an issue that needs to be settled. And with that is basically all I have for the TAC and the PAC, unless someone else has something. All right, anything from the public? Hi, Josh.
Joshua Nugent on behalf of Mojave Pistachios. I'm a PAC member, but I'm asking this as just a member of the public. Since we've got the water resource manager here today, I was just wondering if we are done doing model runs, and so is model run 6.1 and .2, are those now going to be, when we talk about the model being used to set criteria or not, is that the model that we're referencing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
so
it is. We did run. We presented on the transport portion of that too. So we presented on that, but we don't have any more time or money to run additional model runs. So we are using those model runs for the GSP.
So should we then assume that the additional supporting material for the 6.1 and 6.2, where there's all the water allocations, are those also? Because that's
just for clarification, we did this a little bit last time, Josh. It's a very good question, and I tried to make it as clear as I could last time. The model run itself, we don't interpret it as water allocations. All we did is do more assignments for modeling purposes, because the model is being used to evaluate impacts based upon the assumptions we put in. So they're really not allocations that you would want to consider to be, this person can only pump this, and this person can only pump this, and this person is going to pump from this well. These are assumptions that we made. They're the best assumptions we had based on working with the folks in the community and the committees and such, to make the best assumptions we could for the model run to evaluate impacts based upon that model run and those assumptions. So in the GSP, we'll present it that way, but we are not going to be presenting. We are not anticipating, unless the board tells me to, we're not anticipating spending much time in the GSP talking about allocations per se.
Well, I'm just wondering, so the public can assume that we're going to go with the 64,000 acre feet for an ag pool?
That's a board decision. It's in the GSP that way. That's the way we model it. That's the only model run we have. So it'll be presented in the GSP. Impacts based upon that will be presented in the GSP, but I can't necessarily say here today that the board is going to say, okay, the ag pool is going to be this this amount when they go through the allocations. We're still talking about doing having sort of a show cause hearing where people show what their pumping is, a verification process, and then the board actually implementing whatever pumping restrictions or scenarios that aren't in the GSP, doing that separately.
I guess I'm trying to pick up all the breadcrumbs and trying to make a snack so we can, figure out what we're doing here a little bit going forward. So it's confusing as a member of the public to hear that we're using the model, and all the paperwork from the model that the public has to look at shows these people in ag get no water, these people in ag get 8 months of water, these people get 12 months, these people get 16 months. Right. But we're just going to use the overall framework of the model, but we're not going to actually use the details that have been presented to the public. I guess I'm not expecting an answer, and I get what you're saying. It's just that's confusing as a member of the public and as a PAC member to know what's even being considered in the closed sessions. So.
Can I open my big mouth?
Please do.
Josh, I would give you an answer to that. I would not make any assumptions about anything. I think that the modeling was done to paint a picture, to give us a clear understanding of each path, which way it goes forward. But whether or not the numbers are going to be represented in the GSP, I would not make that assumption. But I would assume, no, don't make that assumption.
But I'm just looking at the timeline. We're like 30 days out from it going out to staff review. So I'm assuming when it goes out to staff review, it's going to have the hard numbers in it on who gets what allocations. So within the next 30 days...
When the draft GSP comes out, we will have our best cut at what that idea is all about. As far as outlining allocations, I can't tell you right now whether that will be addressed at all in GSP. I think not.
Okay, because that's the thing is, members of the public have been told in these that these people are not getting water starting January 1, 2020. If you were not an ag pumper from 2010 to 2014,
Mr. President,
and so.
Yes, are we out
of? But he's going well beyond the 3 minutes, and we have to treat him like everybody else.
All right.
Okay, I appreciate the extra time.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you later, Josh.
Yeah, Josh, I will too. Thank you.
Don Decker. Good afternoon. I'm speaking here as a TAC member. There has been many opportunities to bring forth any new information about the El Paso Basin or any other part of the basin for that matter. Many months worth of TAC meetings. The El Paso Basin was looked at quite carefully in the AB 303 study and in the Bureau of Reclamation study before that. And the understanding we have of that basin is quite adequate for the purposes of the GSP. It is always possible, of course, that where we haven't yet discovered certain aspects of our basin, and I don't mean to be so bold to claim that we have, but at the same time, we have an understanding and a groundwater model that is built upon that understanding, and it's a very sound basis for the planning which we're currently doing. And given the time constraints, I don't think we should be spending any more time in a public meeting talking about this. If there really is some additional data, it can be looked at more in an ad hoc fashion, and we'll consider it for some future time. That's what I have for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I know you and I have spoken about this, and I agree with you that there's been ample opportunity to bring it forward, but it either people aren't hearing that, or there's no formal statement or anything coming out of the TAC supporting what you're saying. I'm not doubting you.
If I may interrupt real quickly,
please.
Just to, that you are aware, at that point, that was his concern and comment. It does not represent the TAC as a group comment.
Okay.
You're aware of everything that we have already placed with Stetson and you.
So what I'm looking for is a general agreement from the TAC about how to handle that. And you may not have anybody come forward, for all I know, but it may be something like Don says, maybe we can get a little ad hoc committee together to come up with a formal, approved, whatever you want to call it, from the TAC saying this is what we believe is happening there at this time, and this is the plans to look forward to something.
Yes.
Thank you.
Stetson and the TAC will definitely put that together.
Thank you.
Hello again, Derek Hoffman, attorney for Meadowbrook. I just want to echo some of the concerns that Mr. Nugent shared. And on behalf of Meadowbrook, I've submitted several letters to the board along those lines about the questions and assumptions that are built into Model Scenario 6, and observing that any GSP that's built around those assumptions in that framework would have a lot of questions and concerns and problems. And so I just want to echo those comments. And actually, there were a number of letters that were submitted to the board that are in the packet today that echo those concerns about Model Scenario 6 and the assumptions that are built into that, and whether and how those assumptions actually fit into the SGMA framework and the GSP regulations. And so I would just encourage you to carefully review those letters that you've received from the TAC members, which I think are very well thought out and well articulated. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? All righty. I guess we're on to, I'm sorry, did you have something? What we're talking about here is John asking whether at some future point that when we start looking at the cost of all this, and people need to realize there's going to be a cost to this in some way, whether how it's going to happen, where it's going to happen, is whether that should become a discussion for the PAC to bring forward in as well. And that's what he's asking. So in my opinion, I think it's possible, but I don't know if we're there yet. But when we do get there, I think it could be a discussion. Dave, do you agree that when we're talking finances and what it's going to be costing ratepayers and taxpayers and citizens, it needs to be out there?
At that point, but we don't have the costs
right.
Yet. We have talked on the chapter on management actions and projects. There's no dollar values attached to them.
Right.
There's no grants, et cetera.
Okay.
Once we get to that point, we can and what the plan and allocations are and the impacts of that, then we can talk about where the funding might be coming from.
Thank you. Is that okay? All right. With that, we'll move on to General Manager's report.
First item is the monthly update from Capital Corps. You have their written update in your packet, and I'll just summarize briefly what it contains. The board did receive the technical memorandum on the sources of imported water in early August. That had been promised by July 31st, but as you know, they were working on that WaterWise grant, so it delayed actually putting that out. Congress was in recess for the majority of the month of August, so they took advantage of that to have some meetings, primarily targeting potential Senate actions on authorization and appropriation bills. Were expected this month, related to the water defense bills that Capital Corps is tracking. As far as statewide, they had several meetings this month in Sacramento. They met with the governor's office, the governor's military council, State Water Resources Control Board, and several members of the California legislature to discuss what they call order of magnitude funding request. They are going to be finalizing the funding source strategic plan and plan to bring that to the board at the October meeting. They didn't attend today. They felt that there wasn't much of significance or substance to report, but they will have much more in the month of October, and we'll be here. Michael McKinney will be here as well. That summarizes their report. Any questions?
Not for me on the Capital Corps. Anybody else? Well registration update?
Well registration, legal, staff has drafted the letter to go out to all the well owners. We received a list of well owners from Inyo County. Thank you, John, your staff, and also Bob for San Bernardino County. Stetson provided us I think 3 different files containing addresses for well owners, which Lauren and April went through. There were a number of APNs, parcel numbers, that did not have addresses tied to them. So Lauren reached out to Lorelei, Kern County Planning. Lorelei agreed to take a look at that. She promised to get back to us today, so hopefully we have something today. But in the interim, Lauren and April went through all the lists and removed any that were redundant, didn't seem to be well owners. We have right now, I think, 606 APN and addresses that we can send letters to. Once we get the results from Kern County, from Lorelei, we'll add those to the list, and then we're ready with the letter, the well registration form, which, by the way, has been available on the website for almost a month now. But the letter there will be a registration form accompanying the letter. We'll get those out. We have received 6 well registrations through the website. So that's more than we had last month. But we'll see once we get the letters out. Again, with the date being October 1st, I think we have to have some leniency and not expect those responses to come back by October 1st. So once we get the response from Kern County on the being able to tie addresses to the parcel numbers, and we add those to the existing list that we have, we're ready to go ahead and do the mailing.
Thank you, Don. Any questions for Don? Comments? Anything from the public?
Renee West, Lusk. My question has to do with consequences for not registering your well, because I don't remember it being spelled out specifically in the ordinance. And I've been asked that, what are the consequences?
It is spelled out in the ordinance. A couple of consequences, I don't have it in front of me, I haven't looked at it, but you've got, there's some late penalty provisions in that, and then after that, the GA could decide to go after legal action if somebody was not in compliance with the, well, I guess I'm talking more about the pump fee, but the same thing would apply to the well registration. It's a ordinance. I do not have the ordinance in there, but there should be some provision as to what would happen if there was. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
Okay, thank you.
Camille Anderson. I'm representing myself. Question about the well registration. Are you guys going to change the date from October 1st? There's no way you're going to get registrations by October 1st. And if you put everything out by October 1st, then people are going to be confused and upset because they're already going to have, the date will have passed. It's just a question. I know the ordinance went out for October 1st, but it's September 19th.
Yeah. I think what staff has discussed, we're not going to change the date on October 1st because it's in the ordinance. We won't go through that again. But there will be additional outreach after October 1st to let the public know that there is going to be a leniency because there is late notice that we provided. So we're going to try to handle that through additional outreach to the public.
So you're going to put a billboard up that says October 1st?
Yep.
We are.
All righty.
And you're getting ready to send mailings to all the parcels, right? Will there be a caveat in there about the grace period, if that's what you want to call it? Or could there be in the mailings?
It could be.
Yeah, okay. Anything else for the public?
Don Decker again. As a member of the Domestic Well Owners Association committee that has basically organized that group, I pointed out to you over and over how important the outreach is and how sensitive the well community is. What Camille just offered to you is the best advice that you've had all day. If you really want to communicate, it has to be accurate and it has to be reasonable. And having the October 1 due date still formally part of the process just casts more really bad feelings your way. I want you to hear that from me, and you've heard it from others over and over again. You're doing something here that's really silly.
Comments from the board?
I think he's right.
Yeah, I do too, but I'm not sure.
Right?
Yeah, I think
Putting up a billboard September 30th, say, hey, you got 6 hours.
And I'm not sure how to remedy
just
that.
absurd.
Things already being printed, right?
I think we got to do the outreach. I think we got to get out there. We're late. It's our fault, not theirs. And I think Camille is exactly right. We need to either remove the date or say immediately. What could you put up that sign? What it says?
I don't know.
Is it too late to change or what?
We can ask, but we did change the wording, so it says as of October 1st, 2019.
I know.
Rather than it's required.
As of, yeah, I guess you can argue that.
That was the attempt.
I don't want to argue that.
Yeah.
That was the attempt to try and address that concern.
I think that's why
But
you changed that wording.
The ordinance says October 1st. You can't change that, I don't think. Unless, well, I guess you could.
No, I'm not saying that we change the date. The date. I'm just saying we change the billboard. Is my suggestion.
Is it a possibility, or is it being printed?
To change it to what?
Say, please register your well immediately. Anything but put out a billboard on September 30th and saying you got to register your well tomorrow, and then we take it down October 2nd. That's just silly.
You have a suggestion, John?
We're going to leave it up for 2 months.
We could just remove that line, and it could just say all wells must be registered.
Please register your well. All wells must be registered. Something other than putting a date. I agree.
I defer to Lauren. Are they already printing this? Do you know? You think so?
What?
When you gave us the approval a week or two ago, we immediately turned around and asked them to begin the process. So I'm going to assume that they've already started printing. We can definitely ask, but I'm going to assume they already started.
Ask, please. And what's the cost of printing? $800?
$800 to print and install it.
I agree with Don, and I agree with Camille. I really do. That's just would shock me. What? It's tomorrow. And can we say something? Maybe John is right. Did you know all wells must be registered in the Indian Wells Valley? Period. You know, and leave it at that, because you're going to be sending the letters out to the parcels, and that gives the ordinance of October 1st. But like we said, we could agree that you can put a grace period on there, obviously, because of late deal.
I'm okay with that. Just leave that first one.
Yeah, I'm okay with that if the board is, and let's see if we can do it, Lauren. And if it's already in print, I think we need to ask the question: do we want to eat that first one and come up with a correct one? Do you agree with that, Mick? I mean, we're talking about saving money left and right. Yeah, but if they've already printed, we're going to pay another $800 to do it again.
It's worth.
I think I agree with that. And did you know all wells in Indian Wells Valley must be registered? Please call. Do what you can. Let's see if we can get this out there. We should have picked up on that earlier. So I thank you for the comments.
Well, as I said, we did pick up on it. That was why the wording was changed
To as of
October 1st.
Yeah. But I agree. I think the optics of seeing that October 1st on that particular date, they won't even see the as of part. Yeah. I know you're frustrated, and as we all probably are on this one, but I think it needs to be done. Thank you. Another comment?
One quick comment. Bob McDermott, a can of black spray paint, $6.
Well, you know, they might, maybe when if we agree just to take that one line out, it may be that the people who are printing it up can do that. We don't know. Maybe they can just block that out there. I don't know. All right. Any other comments or questions? Thanks for thinking of this so late, Mick. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Camille. All right. So we're done with the manager's report section. If there's no comments or questions, we'll go ahead and move on to closing comments. So let's start down at the end.
Nothing here. Just looking forward to reading the whole document.
Thank you. Thank you. Commander? Nothing? Scott?
Just one thing, and I don't know if it's a topic that we could maybe address in a future meeting, but I'll bring it up now. I had a member of a co-op well confront me about the billing aspect of it. They get a bill for, I think it's like 98 cents and I'm going to say $1.98. It was like a $3 and something total, two-part bill. And so her concern was like, the cost of, mailing out this bill and then her having to send it back in. It's almost, a moot point. So could they pay it in advance? Can you pay out, could you pay 6 months and not have to deal with such a small, minuscule,
Yeah.
amount at one time?
Answer to that is yes. There have been a couple people who have done that. They just write a check for X amount of dollars and then submit the monthly report, and then it's just deducted and they're credited. So yes.
Okay, so I don't know if we can put that out into a, public information, statement on the billing or something as an option for them.
I don't believe we do a billing, do we? No, there's no billing.
It's just
them paying,
voluntary monthly that they're doing.
Yeah, honor system
Okay.
billing. Yeah.
So, all right.
Okay. Mr. Gleason.
In fact, we'd welcome advance payments at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To answer Josh's question, my advice to him would be this. Until the last person speaks at the last public hearing, before we hit the button to vote, I would make only one assumption about what we're doing and where we're going, and that is this: we are all going to pay more for our water, and we're going to use less. Thank you.
John?
Really encouraged by the agenda item where we're seeking grant funding in the national at the national level. I think that's something we really need to throw our resources towards, is finding more grant money, because we are all well aware of the huge, enormous costs that are on the horizon if we're going to have an infrastructure project that brings water into this valley. So I applaud staff and Capital Corps for pursuing that, and I think we need to really look forward to more of that.
Thank you. Bob? No comment? And my only comment is I want to, again, as I usually do, thank the staff for all their hard work. I'm sorry for the confusion on the billboard, but I'm sure they'll work it out. They're very talented. I'm sure they will find a way to make that work for us all. And I want to thank all the public for their comments and their attendance. And with that, I'll go ahead and close. Are we going back into closed session, or we're done? So we're closing the meeting. Thank you.